what was best for the Creator must naturally be best for the creature. He therefore tried to introduce a peace policy into Sugarloaf Island. His efforts were not successful. The war party was too strong for him. At last he felt constrained to give in to the force of public opinion, and agreed to hold an unarmed palaver with the men of Ratura. The war at any price party would have preferred an armed palaver, but they were overruled. The Raturans chanced at this time to be in somewhat depressed circumstances, owing to a sickness that had carried off many of their best warriors and left their lands partly waste, so that their finances, if we may so express it, were in a bad condition. Now is our chance, now or never, thought the war party, and pushed matters to extremity. On the day appointed for the palaver, one of the most pugnacious of the mountain men got leave to open the deliberations. "You're a low-minded, sneaking son of an ignorant father," he said to the spokesman of the Raturans. "You're another," retorted his foe. Having disposed of these preliminary compliments, the speakers paused, glared, and breathed hard. "You and your greedy forefathers," resumed the mountain man, "have always kept your false eyes on our mountain top, and you are looking at it still." "That's a lie," returned the man of Ratura with savage simplicity. Had they been armed, it is probable that the palaver would have closed abruptly at this point. Seeing that the relations between the parties were strained almost to the breaking point, one of the less warlike among the Ratura chiefs caught his own spokesman by the nape of the neck and hurled him back among his comrades. "We have not, O valiant men of the mountain," he said in a gentle tone, "looked upon your hilltops with desire. We only wish to improve our swamps, increase our sweet potato grounds, and live at peace." "That is not true," reported the fiery mountain man, "and we must have a promise from you that you will let the swamps alone, and not advance one step nearer to the top of our mountain." "But the swamps are not yours," objected the other. "No matter, they are not yours. They are neutral ground, and must not be touched." "Well, we will not touch them," said the peaceful Raturan. This reply disconcerted the fiery mountaineer, for he was anxious to fight. "But that is not enough," he resumed, as a bright idea struck him. "You must promise not even to look at our mountain." The man of Ratura, reflecting how ill able his tribe was to go to war just then, agreed not even to look at the mountain. "More than that," resumed the mountaineer, "you must not even wink at it." "We will not even wink at it," replied his foe. "Still further," continued the warlike mountaineer in sheer desperation, "you must not even think of it." "We will not think of it," answered the accommodating man of Ratura. "Bah! You may go, you peace-loving cowards," said the disappointed mountaineer, turning on his heel in bitter disappointment. "Yes, you may go, in peace," said Ongoloo with sententious gravity, waving his band grandly to the retiring men of Ratura, and walking off with an air of profound solemnity, though he could not help laughing, in his arms somewhere, as he had not a sleeve to do it in. But the Raturans did not go in peace. They went away with bitter animosity in their hearts, and some of them resolved to have a brush with their old foes, come what might. Savages do not, as a rule, go through the formality of declaring war by withdrawing ambassadors. They are much more prone to begin war with that deceptive act styled a surprise. Smarting under the taunts of their foes, the Raturans resolved to make an attack on the enemy's village that very night, but Ongoloo was more than a match for them. Suspecting their intentions, he stalked them when the shades of evening fell, heard all their plans while concealed among the long grass, and then, hastening home, collected his warriors. It chanced that Zeppa had returned from one of his rambles at the time, and was lying in his hut. "Will you come out with us and fight?" demanded Ongoloo, entering abruptly. The mention of fighting seemed to stir some chord which jarred in Zeppa's mind, for he shook his head and frowned. It is possible that, if the savage had explained how matters stood, the poor madman might have consented, but the chief had not the time, perhaps not the will, for that. Turning quickly round, therefore, he went off as abruptly as he had entered. Zeppa cared nothing for that. Indeed, he soon forgot the circumstance, and, feeling tired, lay down to sleep. Meanwhile, Ongoloo marched away with a body of picked men to station himself in a narrow pass through which he knew that the invading foe would have to enter. He was hugely disgusted to be thus compelled to fight, after he had congratulated himself on having brought the recent palaver to so peaceful an issue. He resolved, however, only to give his enemies a serious fright, for he knew full well that if blood should flow, the old war spirit would return, and the ancient suspicion and hatred would be revived and intensified. Arranging his plans, therefore, with this end in view, he resolved to take that peaceful, though thieving, humorist, Wapoota, into his secret councils. Summoning him, after the ambush had been properly arranged and the men placed, he said, "Come here, you villain." Wapoota knew that Ongoloo was not displeased with him by the nature of his address. He therefore followed, without anxiety, to a retired spot among the bush-covered rocks. "You can screech, Wapoota?" "Yes, chief," answered the ex-thief in some surprise. "I can screech like a parrot the size of a whale." "That will do. And you love peace, like me, Wapoota, and hate bloodshed, though you love thieving." "True, chief," returned the other modestly. "Well then listen, and if you tell anyone what I say to you, I will squeeze the eyes out of your head, punch the teeth from your jaws, and extract the oil from your backbone." Wapoota thought that this was pretty strong for a man who had just declared his hatred of bloodshed, but he said nothing. "You know the rock, something in shape like your own nose, at the foot of this pass?" said Ongoloo. "I know it, chief." "Well, go there, hide yourself, and get ready for a screech. When you see the Ratura dogs come in sight, give it out, once, only once, and if you don't screech well, I'll teach you how to do it better afterwards. Wait, then, till you hear and see me and my men come rushing down the track, and then screech a second time. Only once, mind, but let it be long and strong. You understand? Now away." Like a bolt from a crossbow Wapoota sped. He had not been in hiding 2 minutes when the Ratura party came stealthily toward the rock before mentioned. Wapoota gathered himself up for a supreme effort. The head of the enemy's column appeared in view. Then there burst, as if from the bosom of silent night, a yell such as no earthly parrot ever uttered or whale conceived. The very blood in the veins of all stood still. Their limbs refused to move. Away over the rolling plain went the horrid sound, till it gained the mountain, where, after being buffeted from cliff to crag, it finally died out far up among the rocky heights. "A device of the Ratura dogs to frighten us," growled Ongoloo to those nearest him. "Come, follow me, and remember, not a sound till I shout." The whole party sprang up and followed their chief at full gallop down the pass. The still petrified Raturans heard the sound of rushing feet. When Wapoota saw the dark forms of his comrades appear, he filled his chest and opened his mouth, and the awful skirl arose once again, as if to pollute the night air. Then Ongoloo roared. With mingled surprise and ferocity his men took up the strain as they rushed toward the now dimly visible foe. Savage nerves could stand no more. The Raturans turned and fled as one man. They descended the pass as they had never before descended it. They coursed over the plains like greyhounds. They passed through their own villages like a whirlwind, drew most of the inhabitants after them like the living tail of a mad comet, and only stopped when they fell exhausted on the damp ground in the remotest depths of their own dismal swamps. End of chapter 6.